So let's assume that you are a novice with a harmonica in your hand, and you've got it for Christmas, or you've got it for New Year's, or you decided you're going to put your life in a new direction with this thing called a harmonica, and you've got a key of C. Let's just imagine, for the sake of argument, that you've ended up with the right key harmonica. I think if I take myself back 43 years to when I first picked up a harmonica, the thing that always amazed me was the difference between the sound that I got having just gotten my first one. Does your sound sound something like that? If you're a sort of novice, and if your sound is like that, this is the right video for you, because that's where you start. And what amazed me was the difference between that sound and the sort of stuff that I heard on the records. What I'm going to call the kind of the mournful. There was many different kinds of sounds, but a kind of mournful sound. And I would say to myself now, and occasionally I would see a live player. You know, you'd go and you'd find a movie somewhere that had Paul Butterfield or Sonny Terry playing, and what's that? I mean, that sound is so different than what makes for that mournful sound. And so that's really, I just want to, in a very brief, this is like a 5-minute video, kind of address some of the things that are going into that sort of sound. You see, and I hear my own mistakes, but you don't hear mistakes, hopefully. If you're a good player, you do. If you're a beginner, you're going, well, that's blues. I want to learn that kind of stuff. So what am I doing? Well, there's a bunch of different things. Let me kind of take them apart. So one is, obviously, that I've learned how to play single notes, right? And a beginning player can't narrow what we call the embouchure, the bouche is the mouth, in French. Can't narrow the embouchure. It doesn't have enough strength to do that. So if you pick up, you're a beginner, you have no idea how to form an embouchure. And you can find, I have lots of other videos out there that talk about sort of blues harmonica 101. So go and hunt that one down. But that's part of what's going on, is that I have a much more developed embouchure. So I can play one note at a time. Now, number two is I know which notes to play, obviously, so that and I have an internalized sense of time that takes 4 decades to get, and a whole lot of hard living. This is just the mechanics, of course, but so the mechanics are important. Which single notes to play? So I'm playing in that lick that I played, for example. I'm playing what we call a blues scale, and I'm playing the 5 draw to the 4 draw with a bend. So I'm not only playing the right notes, but I'm using what we call bending, and I think that's one of the key things that as a beginner you're going to need. So I urge you to use the YouTube search engine and put in blues harmonica bending, and you'll find, I think I have a video out there or two, but lots of people do at this point. And in fact, the first 3 notes that I play, well, the 3 of the first 4 have a bend in them. So that's crucial to that mournful sound, is those pitches. And I'm doing a little bit of a bend on the 5 draw. Whoop. It's a small bend, but it's different than you going. And I'm going directly into a 4 draw bend, instead of doing what a beginner would do. Right, does that sound like you? Well, I'm showing you, I'm trying to, it's a long journey, but I'm trying to give you a sense of kind of where the endpoints might be. And I glissandoed up. That's the other thing, as I slid up. So that's one of the things that goes to make that mournful sound. It's a little bit like a vocalist going, whoa, 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 whoa. And of course what I did there is show you that there's continuities between the blues pitches that we blues harmonica players make and what blues singers do. I'm not a very good blues singer, but I can sing just enough blues. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And actually, that was a slack 3-hole draw. And a lot of the mournful sound of blues harmonica is located there in that particular pitch that's played on the 3-hole draw. Draw means you're sucking the air through. And it's a tricky one. I call it the blue third. It was, back in the 1920s, it was called W.C. Handy's famous blue note. Terrible. I did it badly there. So those are some of the things that go to make up that mournful sound. But then there's that texture stuff. When I went, and you may think it has all to do with what I'm doing with my hands, but actually very little of what I've done so far does now. I can make some hand sounds and some throat vibrato. So the hands are part of it, the throat. You see, I'm aware that when this stuff comes at you and you're a novice, you can't even know where different stuff is coming from. You just know there's a sound there that you want. Hopefully I've given you a sense of that. By the way, I have a website called modernbluesharmonica.com. You can find out a lot about this stuff, but mostly I've got a lot of stuff on YouTube, and that's what you should be looking at. What's that sound? My kid is doing something. And notice the sound, obviously, of an individual note is a part of it. So part of what your journey is going to be about is kind of opening up and making sure that you've got a sound that sounds sort of vocalized. Now, I did some other stuff. Now, all that stuff has nothing to do with what I'm doing with the hand. I can do the same thing. And nothing to do with the hand. Now, if I use the hand well, I can add to the sound, but it's really not so much about the hand. Okay, what it is about is something we call tongue blocking. And so that's one of the secrets that beginners, unless you're with a really good teacher, a David Barrett or a, somebody like that who sort of, Dennis Grunling, those names will become familiar to you if you stay on the path. People who get you tongue blocking right away, and I tend not to. But I can tongue block, and that's a really important thing, and you'll have to learn about that. I want you to Google or YouTube search tongue blocking, and you'll find lots of stuff that harmonica players care about. So that mournful sound. Now there's something else going on, which is that I'm mixing. Now that I have a strong embouchure and can play one note well, I have to learn how to add some dirt, and I've got a video about this. Someplace out there in YouTube land, sort of adding the dirt, what my friend Joe Felisko calls the dirt, which is when you actually add back in a little of a second note into that first note, and instead of going, you go, now can you hear that thickening? I'm adding a little bit of the 5-hole into the 4-hole as I unbend it. Now, all of this so far, everything that I've talked about, is about technique. And yet, if you're talking about where do you get that mournful sound on the harmonica, in a weird way, although technique's important, it's very important, you can't do any of it unless you've got that feeling inside you. And at some point in my life, I would say right now I'm actually pretty happy, which is why I'm sharing all this stuff with you instead of going and shooting up heroin and putting a gun to my head and doing all kinds of other antisocial things. Getting stone cold drunk like Jimmy Reed and sort of falling out in front of the club. I mean, I don't do those things anymore. I'm sharing. But I went through a period of my life, and you might be going through something like that right now. I suspect that might be why the harmonica is calling to you, because I certainly went through that. A period of my life when nothing was going right, and the harmonica was the way to begin to get that stuff under control. It was also a way to begin expressing that stuff, and that is the joy of this instrument, is it gives you a way to unburden. It's a fairly inexpensive way, and with practice you can get fairly quickly to a place where you're bending and you're doing some stuff that sounds like blues. And blues is a music that knows all about hard times, but it's also a music, harmonica, guitar, singing, it's a music that knows how to toughen you up and how to give you some shape and some form in your expressive, the expressive registers that it helps you with. And that's about all for this lesson. My name is Adam Gussow, and I'll see you down the line with more on this amazing little instrument. See you later. Bye-bye.